Hello friends, and welcome back to a new video in my channel. Today I'm going to talk about a new medium, and in particular the acrylic markers from the brand ARRTX. These in particular are the Simptap markers. This is the set of 48 saturated colors, and it's the first time I'm using this kind of medium, and I'm very excited. Also, I want to point out that this is not sponsored in any way. I was gifted with this marker set, and I'm going to talk about both positive and negative aspects. So this is a very honest review of them. All the packagings from ARRTX feature very light and bright colors, and the markers themselves are very basic. They have this rounded shape and they're very easy to handle, and they feature on one side the brush tip and on the other side the valve that I'm going to show you later. These markers in particular need to be activated, and I'm going to show you all the steps that I follow from the instructions paper. The first one being that you have to shake the marker very well in order the ink to mix evenly. And then you have to take off the cap from the valve and then press the valve like 4 to 5 times at least. I found out that eventually I had to press it 5 times or more for some colors, like the gold, the silver, and this red one in particular, because the ink was very hard to push towards the nib. And then you have to shake the pen again, since the nib looks fully immersed in the ink, and for some of the pens this was very hard to obtain. So at first I activated all the colors of the 48 shades, and this took me like 2 to 3 hours. It was such a pain. I wasn't patient at all and I wasn't used to this process, but I think all the acrylic markers in the world have the same process of activation, and you have to be patient and mix very well the ink, and once the nib is fully immersed, you're going to paint like usually, and you don't have to repeat this process again. Eventually, when you see that the nib is a bit dry, you have to shake again the pen, and that's it. So at this stage the colors look very saturated on paper and also opaque, just like acrylic gouache. The negative side that I can point out is that they didn't name the colors. I honestly prefer having a name underneath each color. Like for example, this red could be like a crimson red or like strawberry red. I also like the creative names of colors of some brands, and I would prefer to have some names instead of numbers. But this is just my personal preference, and I think there are many artists that prefer numbers instead of names, so that's okay. I also did a few layering and blending tests because I wanted to get to know these colors better, and on the first one I wanted to get a smooth gradient from the lighter color to the darker pink, but I didn't get the effect I wanted in the end. I went back and forth with the lighter color on the darker one, and then at the end I added again the darker one in order to balance everything and get the smooth gradient I wanted. But as you can see, the effect is like invisible because there's no gradient almost at all. And so I can say that these acrylic markers are like acrylic gouache, and you have to use them in a more graphic way than in a more painterly way. And it's not very suitable for my art style, but I'm going to make them work anyway. I then proceeded doing some layering tests so that I could see how opaque these colors were, and I find out that these colors are not 100% opaque like they said on the packaging, but they still show off on the top layer, and I really love this kind of variation within the colors. I love to see a little bit of transparency and use it to my advantage. I then did a little proximity test so I could see if the wet colors influence each other, but eventually they didn't, so I can paint close objects in my painting without worrying about smudging or bleeding, so I'm very happy about this. Now, before getting into the final drawing, I did several tests because I wasn't sure how to approach these colors. And so I did these little drawings that you can also see on my Instagram, in particular the last one. And after I did these drawings, I had like a clear idea about how I want to use these colors for my paintings. I knew I liked the transparency level. I mean, these are opaque, but not so opaque. So I wanted to take this and put it into this final drawing. So I did the first layer with a light color, a light peach color, and this will be like my base color, and all the colors on top will look a bit different and with some variation inside. Also, once the color is dry, it's very even and uniform, while at the beginning, when it's wet, you can see all the brush strokes and you may have a heart attack, but don't worry, it's just like the process, so trust the process. I had a really hard time to come up with an idea for this drawing, but in the end I got inspired by the violet shade in the set, and since I didn't use them a lot in my previous tests, I wanted to use them in this particular drawing, and I find out that violets are flowers, so why not painting some flowers? Anyway, the first approach was the painterly one, so I just had fun with the colors and I put some light shade at the beginning on the lighter parts, and then I went with a darker color on the rest of the petals, and then I used some yellow on the center, and I went like back and forth with the same colors, so I don't know how to explain this process, but I just had fun with colors and didn't worry about blending too much because I knew the colors don't blend evenly, so I just had fun putting these brush strokes. The good news is that if you get something wrong, you can still correct it because the colors are pretty opaque. So you can go on top of each other and correct everything. As you can see me doing here, like I didn't like the yellow part being too like harsh. And so I went on top with darker violet, and then I went on top again with the light yellow. And I did that like 4 times in a row. You see me going on top with some white color because I didn't like the blue to be so dark. So in order to get it more bright and light, I decided to use the white color, and this is my trick for every color in this painting. Every time I need some pastel shades, I put the white on top. The fact is that this set doesn't have a lot of pastel and light shades like the ones I usually use in my art, so I had to work with layers, and in the end I think I get it right. And of course the white nib now is not white anymore because the nib takes some color and it gets a bit dirty, but it doesn't bother me. At the beginning of each painting, I feel very insecure, so you can see it by my first approach, which is very painterly. I did a lot of back and forth with the same colors for the first flower. I couldn't decide whether I wanted very harsh violet edges or not. So when I have this approach, it's because I don't feel confident about my choices. But by the end of this flower, I got more confident, and you can tell this by my color choices, which were more precise and clear. So from now on, you'll see me using a more graphic approach, and by this I mean that I painted in every single shape and I didn't worry too much about mixing colors and getting a nice gradient, or at least trying to get it. I just chose the colors and painted the shapes, and then also having fun with some textures and different patterns on the clothes. And overall, I really like the fact that the colors aren't too much opaque, so the colors underneath still shows off, and it's very nice to see this color variation without trying to get gradients on its own. And this is the reason why I did the sort of underpainting also for the girl's hair. I first used a violet shade and then I went on top with a brown shade and just avoid painting some spots that are the lighter parts of the hair. Now let's talk about shadows, which is a very dear topic to me. And I figured out to do this kind of graphic shadows instead of blending everything like I would do with watercolors. So I used a very dark green because I didn't have too much choice. I didn't like the greens of this set. I think they look too unnatural, but this is my personal choice and preference because I gravitate towards natural shades or very light and pastel shades rather than very bright saturated and unnatural shades. Anyway, I used this very dark green and then I went on the outside with the lighter green, and while the color is still wet, I went back on top with the darker green, and so when the color is wet, it will blend a little bit because the nib will take off the lighter color and it will not be so dark as in the beginning. I don't know if you understand what I said, honestly. Anyway, if you want to apply this method, I have to warn you that all the nibs will get dirty and messy. Now that all the colors are put in place, I can go on top and add some variation and textures and details like these nice strips. And I really like the effect of the brush, the fact that it releases color not so evenly. So some parts of the strips are lighter than the other parts, and I really like this variation. Again, I think I've used this word a lot in this video. It may happen that some color fall on the paper, and this happens if when you took off the cap, you don't look at the nib and you don't take the excess on the with a piece of paper. So yeah, I just took off the cap and went directly on the paper, and of course the nib was too full of ink and everything went on the drawing, but it doesn't matter because you can just clean it with a piece of paper and then correct the color because of course it's opaque and it will cover every mistake. The amazing thing about this brush nib is that you can use it both like a large brush covering large backgrounds and also like a very thin brush doing very tiny details like the eyes. And I think this is very great and amazing, and it acts like a very high quality synthetic brush. At this point of the painting, I decided to change the color background and switch from the peachy color to a bluish, like a pastel blue color. But the fact is that the blue color was darker than what I was expected to be on the peachy color. And so, yeah, in the end, I think it wasn't a great choice. The nice thing is that you can still see the peachy color underneath, but the bad thing is that there are a lot of brush marks and these are very visible. I don't know why the color is not so even. I think it's because I didn't shake the marker very well, so the nib wasn't fully immersed in the ink. But anyway, I can't tell that I really hate this effect. I think it gives like vintage vibes, I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you'd preferred the peachy background. Now that the background is blue, I think that the whole painting lacks a bit of contrast. I think that the green part is very similar in value with the blue background, and this is why I'm using some dark green to add some details, and I also put some light yellow on the leaves to pop out more. So overall, I like this medium. I think it's very unique and it's very practical to use because you won't get a lot of mess on your table with plates and water and tubes and so on. So you just have to use these markers and open your sketchbook and do a piece of art. And also, I'm not used to this medium, but I think if you like the graphic style and very saturated colors, you'll get a lot from it. I also think that it's a very great quality for price tool, and so I honestly suggest you to have it if you need it. On the negative side, I would complain about the fact that the activation process was like very long and sometimes harmful. And at the same time, I didn't like the caps of the valves because they keep falling everywhere on the table, under the table. And I think that I lose them all by the end of the month. Also, there weren't too many colors that I was crazy about, but I think that this is a color palette that can work for everyone. Of course, that if you have different personal preferences, this may not work for you, but overall, you can use them for nature or for character drawings, so they're very versatile in my opinion. And I also missed the names of the colors. So these are the good and the bad aspects I could think about, but if you have some considerations to do about this set in particular, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video and see you in the next one. Bye!